Are you guys kidding me? The Browns traded back up in the 5th round, took Shedeur Sanders just a day after taking Dillon Gabriel. They passed on Shedeur at 2. They passed on Shedeur at 33. They passed on Shedeur at 36. They passed on Shedeur at 67. They passed on Shedeur at 94. They had a pick earlier today. They took Dylan Sampson, the running back out of Tennessee, but at some point the value for Shedeur Sanders in the 5th round was just too good to pass up for Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Bentley, apparently. And now in a move that I'm trying to make sense of on the fly, to be honest with you, this doesn't make a lot of sense to me at all. I am thrilled it happened. Shedeur, congratulations on becoming the newest member of the Cleveland Browns. I've been watching the Cavs game. My laptop wasn't even plugged in. I had to set this up. So the Cavs live post-game stream that's coming up, the second half, I may not be as in tune as I was. But the Browns just took their second quarterback of the draft 2 days after trading out of the number 2 pick to acquire a 2026 first-round pick with the thought process, at least we assume, to have the capability then to move up in next year's draft to take a quarterback. This is absurd in a million years. In a million years. If you had told me the Browns would get Shedeur Sanders in the 5th round, I would have done backflips. I would have done somersaults, aerials, whatever kind of acrobatic feat I would literally injure myself doing because the value is just too good to pass up on at that point. And I also would have said, there's not a chance in hell he's available in the 5th round. We kept doing those PFF mock draft simulators in the days leading up to the draft, right? And somehow Tyler Shuck was always available in the 6th round. And I was like, well, you can't pass on in the 6th round if he's there. You take a flyer on a second quarterback. It is what it is. And now that unrealistic reality is the realization for the Cleveland Browns. I don't know. It is baffling. It is wild. It is crazy. Shedeur Sanders and Dillon Gabriel and Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett are all now in the same quarterback room for the Cleveland Browns. I don't foresee a world where they keep all 4 of those guys on the active roster. I can't imagine there is any scenario where the Browns enter the 2025 regular season with 4 quarterbacks on the roster. So who's the odd man out? Is it a battle between Kenny Pickett and Joe Flacco in camp for the starting position? Loser gets cut and you roll with 2 rookies as your backup and your 3rd string? Or Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders battling it out for which rookie quarterback gets a spot? If that's the case, then I hate both of the picks because the Browns have so many holes on their roster, and you spent 2 top 5 picks on guys that are essentially overriding and competing with each other for one spot. I don't know what the plan is. I cannot wait to hear Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry chime in and tell us a little bit of what their thought process was into making this move. My phone's blowing up, so if you see me keep checking my watch, and I'm just trying to see if I'm getting any new information coming in on this, but my mind is blown. I tweeted this morning. I don't love taking a quarterback, especially a backup quarterback, a projected backup quarterback like Dillon Gabriel, in the 3rd round when there were other impact starters still left on the board. But after thinking to myself, okay, let me try to make sense of this. I came to the conclusion that Gabriel fit what Stefanski wants to do. Just like Shedeur, he's a quick processor, ton of in-game experience, smart with the football, doesn't turn it over much. Like that fits the Stefanski vibe. And I came to the conclusion, just my opinion, I'm not saying it's right, I'm not saying it's wrong, but my 2 cents was that the Browns preferred Gabriel over Sanders because Gabriel was not a threat to the incoming quarterback they were almost penciled in to draft next season. Gabriel is a career backup, just based off projections. He's a career backup. Case Keenum is his NFL comp. There's a reason he was consensusly ranked as the 8th, 9th, or 10th quarterback in the draft in a weak quarterback draft. So whoever the Browns brought in next year, Gabriel was no threat. Sanders is going to be a threat to whatever quarterback the Browns bring in next year. For better or worse, regardless of what he does on the field, there are going to be a portion of the Browns fan base that will stand for Shedeur. We saw it throughout the entire draft lead-up process, where regardless of what the latest report said and all the indications were, they were still clamoring for Shedeur on the lake, and credit to them, they ended up getting what they wanted, just at a much lower value than the number 2 overall pick. There will never be, in their minds, a quarterback that supplants him until Shedeur gets a chance to go out there and fail. But this season, When is he going to get that opportunity? Now, maybe he comes in and he beats out Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett. I'm not ruling that out. That could certainly 100 million % happen. It is not out of the realm of realistic thinking to say, hey, Shedeur was considered a first-round talent on tape, second round, whatever. At some point, he was the favorite to be the number 2 pick, in contention to be the number 1 overall pick. He, in theory, could beat out Kenny Pickett, who hasn't been very good as a pro, and Joe Flacco, who's 40 years old. So if that's the case, then yes, he will certainly get his chance to go out there and prove what he's worth as an NFL quarterback. But if you're under the impression and the mindset that the Browns are going to draft a quarterback high in 2026, which is what the initial trade of trading back from 2 to 5, passing on Travis Hunter, taking Mason Graham, and getting an additional 2026 first-round pick, if that is what that plan was for, when is either Gabriel or Sanders going to get a chance to establish themselves and prove to the fan base, and prove, not to the fan base, to the front office, and I guess the fans in an indirect way, that they're worthy of being in consideration for the long-term quarterback spot? I was going back and forth with some people on Twitter this morning. In the last decade, this is 10 drafts, obviously not including this draft, but 9 years before this, only 3 quarterbacks drafted outside of the first round have turned into anything. Dak, Purdy, and Jalen Hurts. 3. That's it. 3. The rest have turned into either backups or they're out of the league already. To have expectations for any quarterback taken outside of the first round is wishful thinking. It doesn't mean it can't happen. I'm not saying Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders can't become good pros. I'm just saying the numbers, the history, the track record says it is highly unlikely that a quarterback drafted outside of the first round turns into a major contributor on the NFL level. My gut tells me, despite the fact that the Browns took Dillon Gabriel over Shedeur Sanders, at the end of the day, I think he might end up being the odd man out of this rotation. Maybe he can sneak him onto the practice squad, but it will certainly be a battle between Sanders, Pickett, Flacco, and Gabriel, all 4, for those 3 quarterback spots on the active 53-man roster. And you can keep that emergency quarterback now, but I can't see a world where the Browns are keeping 4 guys on the, Steve, that's over a decade ago. Listen, Director Steve's texting me with stuff. I said the last decade, Steve. If you're going to text me during the show, you better be accurate. You were inaccurate that text, Steve. Be better. Yes, I'm calling you out. You know why I'm calling you out? Because the Browns just drafted Shedeur Sanders. I want to take you guys in on a little trade secret here. I had texted Anthony about an hour ago saying, hey, I have a content idea. What if we did the UCSS Content Hall of Fame? Guys who have a shelf life. When we put their name in the SEO titles, it's instant clicks. And eventually they come and they go. They leave our lives. And I was ready to retire Shedeur Sanders' jersey on the UCSS Hall of Fame content list on Monday. And now we don't have to because he is with us for the foreseeable future. I don't understand the reasoning behind taking Dillon Gabriel if Shedeur Sanders was a guy that you felt confident in drafting. It makes no sense, logically speaking, to draft 2 quarterbacks late. It may turn out to be a stroke of genius. It could turn out to be an absolute catastrophe. But in the 5th round, the value for Shedeur Sanders was incredible. Mel Kiper Jr. is just one of the many NFL draft analysts out there. I'm going to use him as an example. Other guys disagree with his exact rankings, but to give you context of the value the Browns just got, Shedeur Sanders was Mel Kiper Jr.'s number 1 player available entering yesterday. There were over 70 players drafted yesterday. He was still the number 1 player available today. He was a top 21 prospect, according to Todd McShay. He was a top 15 prospect, according to Mel Kiper. He was a top 30 prospect, according to Dane Brugler. He was a top 25 prospect, or top 30, I forget, according to Daniel Jeremiah. And the Browns got him with the 144th pick. You may not like Shedeur. You may not like his game. You may not like the circus that comes with him. You may not like 1,000 different things about him. But in terms of value, the Browns just got an incredible value pick in the 5th round. It doesn't mean it's going to pan out. It doesn't mean Shedeur is going to be a good pro. But in terms of value, it is an incredible value pick for the Cleveland Browns. And earlier in this draft, I myself criticized the Browns for taking an off-ball linebacker at 33, ahead of where he was ranked according to most consensus boards. I thought taking a running back and a tight end and then a quarterback to round out your day 2 picks were non-premium positions. When you had so many holes on the roster, there were other areas that I thought you could fill that would have been a more compelling case to be that pick. But at the end of the day, the Browns are taking two swings at the apple, or two swings at the shot here. I don't even know what I'm trying to say. They're taking two swings here. We had done this subject on UCSS. We did this topic. Would you be mad if the Browns took two quarterbacks? And at the time, Jason was on the panel, Jay was on the panel, Bull was on the panel, and G was on the panel. And everyone said, you know what? They probably should. They've been so bad at evaluating quarterback talent over the last 30, 40 years. You might as well take a swing on two. Now, this is not how I anticipated seeing that swing at two going. I thought it'd be more conventional, like how the Washington Redskins back in the day did it, with RG3 being a top 2 pick. And then you take Kirk Cousins in the 4th round, not taking two guys in the 3rd and 5th round. But you know what? You might as well. Because if you don't have a quarterback, you got nothing. You have nothing. No quarterback, nothing. The Browns currently do not have a quarterback capable of leading them to the highest of heights. Joe Flacco was a great story in 2023. Maybe he can channel that again in 2025, but if anyone tells you with the utmost confidence, Joe Flacco can go toe-to-toe with Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson in the division, and can go toe-to-toe with Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes and those guys, they're lying to you. And if anyone tells you Kenny Pickett is a guy they feel confident in being able to lead the Browns to the playoffs or to a Super Bowl, they're lying to you. So you needed a position, you needed a player at a position that can change the trajectory of your franchise. And now you have two swings at it. Do I think Dillon Gabriel is a franchise-changing quarterback? Personally, I don't. I think he'd be a successful backup in the league for a while, but I don't think big picture-wise he's the answer to your quarterback question. Can Shedeur be? He was graded a lot higher by a lot of people who are much smarter than me at doing so. Greg Cassell said he thought he was a mid-first round, early second-round pick. Sean King said he thought he was a mid-first round, early second-round pick. I mentioned earlier, Mel Kiper had him as his number 1 quarterback in the entire draft. Brugler, Jeremiah, McShay all had him in that 2 to 4 range, depending on personal preference by which team and which scheme he was going to go into. So, yeah, maybe I do think. I know for a fact his ceiling, or I think his ceiling is higher than Dillon Gabriel's. Will he be developed properly? Will he get enough opportunities to showcase that ceiling? Will he ever be a good enough player to outweigh the distractions that will naturally come with the Shedeur Sanders? And I don't even say that in necessarily a bad way. When you are a player with the stature of a Shedeur Sanders, there's media attention that comes with that. Your father is Deion Sanders. That's a whole separate storyline that I hope Cleveland fans are ready to deal with this season, even for a backup quarterback. I think part of the reason Shedeur slipped was at some point teams said, is Shedeur better than the distractions that naturally come with picking Shedeur Sanders? And a lot of teams said, you know what? We don't think so. We can't have a backup quarterback or a third-string quarterback or a guy who's not a franchise changer potentially. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm saying potentially bringing in some of the distractions that Shedeur Sanders will naturally bring. It's not his fault. It's not a knock on Shedeur. It's just the reality of the situation. The Browns, though, in round 5 said, you know what? Screw it. Bring it on. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. We can cut bait. It cost us almost nothing. I mean, look at the 5th round. Let me pull this up real quick, but look at the 5th round picks the Cleveland Browns have made under the Andrew Berry front office regime. They took Nick Harris in 2020. He was their only 5th round pick. He's long gone. No one's missing Nick Harris. In 2021, they had 2 5th round picks, Tony Fields and Richard LeCount. Both gone. No one's missing them. In 22, the 5th round picks, Jerome Ford still on the roster. They drafted 2 running backs. His days may be coming to an end after this season. In 2023, his 5th round picks, DTR and Cam Mitchell. Mitchell's still on the roster. DTR was part of the Kenny Pickett trade. And last season, his 5th round pick, Jamari Thrash, who very rarely, if at all, saw the field. So that's when I say the expectations are incredibly low. Those are what you expect from a 5th round pick. Now, there are 5th round picks that shine. Puka Nacua was a 5th round pick. You can find absolute gems within the 5th round. It's just unlikely. The best players are typically scouted and found out ahead of time, and there's a reason they're drafted in the 1st and 2nd rounds. Now, Shedeur may have 1st and 2nd round talent and fell because of off-field character, distraction, whatever the terminology may be. But the reality is And the bottom line of this is the Browns. I have the Cavs on right to my side. I'm trying to keep an eye on it for a post-game stream coming up in a sec. But the Browns just got a player that some believe could be a franchise changer. And he was the only player available on the board at 144. The only player on the board available at that spot that you'd be able to say that about. Everyone else, you can say with the utmost certainty, to the 99.9th percentile. But they're not going to change your franchise. They could be a good player, but they're not going to change your franchise. There's always that 0.1% that maybe you'd be wrong. There's the Brock Purdy, the Tom Brady's of the world. But to a 99.9% confidence percentile, you could say the rest of the players available at 144 were not franchise changers. We're not organizational game changers. Shedeur is the exception. I'm not saying he will. I'm saying he could. He may. He has the capability to do that. He did it at Jackson State. He did it at Colorado. Will he do it with the Cleveland Browns? That remains to be seen. But unlike the rest of the players available, he has the chance to. I'm going to wrap this up here in a second with my final thoughts. This makes a ton of sense on the one hand. Incredible value for a player that was not supposed to be there in the 5th round. On the other hand, you drafted Dillon Gabriel over him yesterday. That tells us something. You took and traded out of the 2nd overall pick to try and get a quarterback next season. That's why you picked up that extra 1st-round pick. And now you have 2 rookie quarterbacks alongside 2 veteran quarterbacks. And by the way, they traded a 5th-round pick for Kenny Pickett. Like, they gave up draft capital to get Kenny Pickett. So that's a guy that they clearly are, at least have some investment in. Can you imagine the fan reaction if they cut Joe Flacco? They bring Joe back just to cut him a couple weeks later if he loses out in training camp. Someone's got to go. You got 4 quarterbacks. But before I got distracted, it's an incredible value. It's a guy that is a relative consensus. There's an outlier, top 30, top 20 player in the draft who was available at 144. On the other hand, you passed up on him not once, not twice, not 3 times, not 4 times, not 5 times. You took him on your 6th pick. You took a quarterback before him. Now you have to go back to Dillon Gabriel after telling him last night, we chose you for a reason, and say, you like this guy too. Iron sharpens iron. Be ready to compete. I'm not sure Dillon Gabriel is so thrilled about that pick. I'm curious how Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett feel. Flacco's talked about not wanting to be a mentor in the past. His comments this week were, it happens naturally, but I'm not going to necessarily go out of my way. I'm competing here to be the starting quarterback. Now he's got 2 rookie pups to help mentor up in some capacity over the next couple of months before the season starts. But the Browns have Shedeur Sanders. The slide is over. Pick 144. The Browns traded up, getting in front of Philadelphia to take him. And now the Shedeur content continues. He is in the rare realm of the Tim Tebows of the world. And I'm trying to think of another backup quarterback in the history of my lifetime that drew as many stories and as many headlines and as many views and as many clicks as a Shedeur Sanders will. Tebow is up there. Shedeur, before even stepping onto an NFL field for one time, for the very first time as a pro, maybe the 2nd most talked about backup quarterback in the history of the league. I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm just saying that's the reality of the situation. For me personally, as a content creator, this is beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Couldn't have asked for a better outcome here. And I guess the Browns could have had Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders and Quinshon Judkins and Carson Schlesinger and Harold Fannin and someone else at 94 and Dylan Sampson if they really wanted to. But my, oh my, what a day. The Cavs are up 19 points with a minute to go. We'll be back in about 20 minutes for a Cavs post-game stream. I want to get off here. We have 1,000 comments, which means there is not a chance I'll be able to read them, so I'm not even going to look at them. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Shedeur Sanders is a Cleveland Brown, the 144th pick in the draft. They traded up in front of the Philadelphia Eagles to make the selection. They took Dillon Gabriel yesterday. They took Shedeur Sanders today. Can Shedeur beat out Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett for the starting job? Can he beat out Dillon Gabriel We'll find out. We do have some super chats. So I'll read these ones real quick. Christian says, this team is so unserious. Why draft Dillon Gabriel? Ray Smith says, Andrew Berry needs to be fired, period. Nothing the Browns do ever makes sense. I can't take it anymore. Cleveland is a Cavs town. Browns are miserable. Jeff's Bookshelf says, this feels like a Jimmy move. Jimmy was at the Colorado Pro Day. Jimmy did talk to Dillon Sanders. They were photographed together. Maybe Jimmy was in love with the fact of drafting Shedeur. Who knows? Jeff, it could be. I don't know the answer. Next up, Tyler the Destroyer of Worlds says, Andrew Berry watched Draft Day way too many times. And last but not least is Garbage Goober, who says, I know I shouldn't be mad that they just got extreme value drafting Sanders when they did, but the total about face in the middle of the draft concerns me. There are too many cooks in the kitchen. Like I said, on the one hand, it's incredible value. On the other hand, it also doesn't make sense. But I'm here for it, and I can't wait to see where the Shedeur roller coaster goes over the next few months. We appreciate you tuning in, and we'll see you, no joke, in about 20 minutes for a Cavs post-game stream. Catch y'all later. Peace.